guys, this is Mr. E85, and today I'll be talking about a little bit of ethanol E85 tuning, and specifically ethanol from the pump. Now, of course, this is a 97 Cobra. I'm running an NPI GT engine with NPI heads, high-tech stage 2 cam, 4-tech V7 supercharger, the JT version, having pulley 3.33. Now, ethanol content at the fuel pump varies. It always varies, especially there's some laws and mandates from state to state. As far as ethanol content in a tune goes, you can get a tune to accept your ethanol content if you have it basically using a closed loop fueling method. Now, the biggest myth is that people assume if the ethanol content is under 85%, especially if it's under 70%, that the ethanol is no good. And that's not true. You can use ethanol content down to about 50%, and your MBG ignition timing for your engine combination will be just about exactly the same. I'd maybe pull a degree or two for safety if you know you're going to have a tune with ethanol variants, but it's completely safe. The chemical properties of ethanol and the cooling properties of ethanol still apply just the same. Naturally, I would prefer as much ethanol content as I can because of the benefits that it has for the engine. Cooler running, keeps the engine clean, keeps pistons clean, keeps everything working great. Make sure you do your maintenance on it. Do your oil changes a little bit more frequently, especially if you're running in a boosted application or if you have an engine that has more than a little bit normal blow-by. In this engine combination, it's an EC5 system. It's an EC5 setup. Basically, the method I'm using is closed loop fueling. I have closed loop fueling that it detects the ethanol, well, it detects the stoic value at idle and a little bit above idle. And in my tables, what I have that tune doing is making fuel corrections, long-term fuel corrections across the tune. And I have those keep alive memory parameters set so that they make these changes very rapidly, that they're always learning, that they're continuously learning to keep updated. Because anywhere I'm seeing the ability to compensate for about 30 to 35% stoic value when it comes to the ethanol content at the pump. Now, the problem, like I was saying, isn't MBT spark ignition timing. The problem you run into is the stoic value, the lambda. You want your short-term, your long-term fuel trims, especially as a tuner, to target exactly what you want. On pump gas, you don't have those content variances in ethanol too much. It's normally 10% solid all the time. And any little variance that may be there, the computer compensates for it. Well, with pump ethanol, pump E85, you have a lot bigger swing. You have anywhere from as low as 51%, and I've seen as high as 95% at a pump. And you have to have a tune that's able to compensate for that. Because if you tune on E85 and you're targeting a certain stoic value, if you fill up and your content is E60, your tune's going to run a lot richer, you're going to run a lot rich, and sometimes you'll actually be excessively rich. You'll be too rich, and that'll cause the car to run bad. Since this is EC5, it's a less advanced ECU than the Copperhead ECUs and some of the ECUs that other newer cars use. My methods for targeting the fuel content ratio in here are very primitive, but it works, and I've been testing it to work continuously. We've mixed ethanol content multiple times, and we never have a single problem. Now, on your newer vehicles, especially your vehicles that come with widebands, they have an even greater ability to compensate for the content of ethanol at the pump. And remember, you don't have to change tunes for your spark timing. Anywhere between that range from about as low as 50% on up, your spark timing can essentially be the same. And that's a good thing to have in this combination if you're going to use automatic fuel trims in your tune. It depends on your tuner. Some tuners will be confident and comfortable doing this. Some tuners won't. Of course, the other things that you need to compensate and understand for in your tunes are your injector sizes, the mass airflow combinations you're using, and the combination for your engine. In some cases, you won't be able to use a mixed gas or a mixed fuel tune, and that's perfectly fine. But to get the advantages of the ethanol E85, you should have a tune specifically written for it that will compensate all the fuel trims, the short and long-term fuel trims, for the changes. And you also want to see those changes at wide open throttle. In this tune, I can force closed loop in wide open throttle. I'm not doing that. The way I'm getting within 10% gas mileage on this tune is I've purposely changed the values that target while you're at cruise to open loop, and I'm cruising at about 17 to 18 AFR as a value, and that's edgy. But for this engine combination, lower compression, especially lower dynamic compression ratio with a cam, it's got a bit of overlap in it. It's relatively safe. It's a little bit leaner. I would honestly probably only run, especially depending on the combination, what the engine likes. I'm running up to 50 degrees of spark advance at cruise. It all depends on what your engine likes. When I tune, I don't only use a generic air-fuel ratio, a lambda or stoic value. I also use my vacuum gauge. I want to be able to see what the engine likes, when it likes it. I want to be able to feel how the engine is running. And this is, of course, for your general street tune. This car I've tuned, it's never been in a dyno or on a dyno its entire life. We will before we pull this engine for the new one. Now, I don't want to keep this video and make it really long, but you want to tune what your engine likes. There's no such thing as just a general base. There's a general target and a general idea, of course, when we're tuning, but you're always going to be plus or minus those generic values to get the best combination for your engine. And you want to tune, you want a calibration on your ECU that's going to be safe. You want to be very safe with the computer. You want to be very safe with your engine. You may realize for the given situations that you may encounter with variances in ethanol fuel, that you have to make changes accordingly. Now, once you make all the changes that you need to your tune so that you can get it working perfectly at cruise, idle, wide open throttle, save that tune, go out, let your car learn the changes. It may take up to a day to learn those changes, get one full cold or warm cycle, and then go back and make adjustments to your tune, do your data logging, save your data logs, review those data logs. I always suggest to review the data logs with fresh eyes. Look at your tune, come back to your tune. And this is especially for new tuners out there, especially on the street. It's important. Don't make changes while you're driving. Be safe out there. Anyway, this car is doing very good with ethanol. Across all the ethanol contents, I'm seeing within 10% fuel economy on a 200,000 mile engine for E85. And between E85 and regular pump gas, 93 octane, which is a very good fuel range. And the way that's happening, higher fuel pressure, better atomization, injection timing is slightly changed, only enough to take advantage of cooling the intake charge at the valve opening. And this may or may not have any huge significant value, but it can help with making sure each cylinder gets its proper fill of fuel without missing the overlap period in the cam. Of course, I am also compensating in my tune for idle, cranking fuel, startup, everything like that. Cold cranks actually are doing amazing. They're doing pretty great. I don't have any severe issues with cold cranking. Get all your crank pulse widths, get those all in line. Those are things you need to check, especially when you change injectors, when you change your tune. If you're changing your tune, you can change your mass airflow table, or you can change your map table, or you can change your injector values. I prefer, if I'm going from one fuel to the next, to change my injector values and leave my mass airflow curve the same, especially if I'm just doing a twin tune for 93 and then ethanol E85 content blends. Of course, in a vehicle like this, fuel trims are going to be extended from one side to the next, and fuel trims are going to get pretty wild, especially when you start introducing lesser content of ethanol in than the car is used to. So in an old ECU setup like this, the car tends to react to it. It says, hey, hold up, we're running rich for now, but it catches itself. It learns within the first 5 minutes up to warm up, and the car runs perfect from there. So there's a small learn process when the content of the ethanol changes. With my wide open throttles, everything as far as the performance mode of the car goes are fine. I have some variations in my tune for transmission, shifting and shifting points with the E85, just to, it's making more power. There needs to be a little bit more line pressure, EPC pressure, and some small changes like that to compensate in the tune. Change the spark values, and also my fuel stabilized and fuel base tables are targeted a bit differently. Targeting those a bit differently, I target leaner than Stoic, more leaner than I would on gasoline, because there's the cooling factor of ethanol there. Because ethanol has cooling properties, naturally, you can run the tunes a little bit leaner. If you're out there and you're making tunes for other vehicles, I do not suggest doing that. Tune it just like you would for gasoline. Make sure it's a safe tune. This is also a safe tune, but it's specific to me. I can address this tune anytime, and I do experimentation pretty much daily with this car for other concepts, other principles. So if you're going to make tunes out there in the wild for people, you want a general that's going to work great, but is also tailored for that vehicle. Because as we stated once again, all vehicles aren't the same, and that's something that's very important to consider. So you want to get the vehicle out, you want to do testing. There's no bucking, starts perfectly, cranks perfectly, the car runs amazing. I never see any major issues with this vehicle. I'm not washing my cylinders out, and honestly, everything's amazing. Of course, I'll be posting on the Mr. E85 page as usual, and if anyone has anything they'd like to critique or add to this video, go ahead, because knowledge is power, and people out there want to learn how to tune. But we also want to dispel some of the myths about ethanol and E85, especially pump ethanol, and the variances that you see as far as people considering it to be no good. That's basically all I've got for this video, and I'll see you guys around on the pages.